About a week ago, I did a video on transforming LRGB, RGB, and OSC images into the HOO color palette. The process I covered ran you through the nuts and bolts of the process, in which you let your red master take the place of the HA, and you manually combined your green and blue masters to take the place of O3. But PixInsight has a very handy tool inside of it, called Narrowband Normalization. You can find it up here in the process list. And while this tool is intended for normalizing the coloration of narrowband images to palettes such as HOO and SHO, it also works very well to convert and improve color images. I'm going to take a finished LRGB image that I shot of the Tadpole Nebula and use the tool to convert the coloration into the HOO palette. When I open the tool, it is defaulted to the HOO palette, and when I open a preview window, it will show the Tadpole Nebula image in the HOO palette. Now, personally, I'm more used to seeing HOO with the golds playing more of a role of red within an image, but this probably happens because both HA and S2 information are on the red side of the spectrum. The tool itself doesn't really know what to do with that. It's just converting all the information that's red into this gold coloration, and so the HA takes on a palette that isn't the typical HOO palette that we see. However, if you Google the Tadpole Nebula in HOO, you'll see some of those images will present the crescent of nebulosity to the right and the bottom side of this image as red, and some will present it more as golden. It really depends more on the color scheme that the developer chooses to go with. What I like about this color scheme, however, is it really sharpens up all the detail within the image, and it brings out the blue into this bright, beautiful cerulean or sky blue that is so remarkable within both HOO and SHO palettes. Now we can affect the way the coloration blends together by adjusting the blend amount, which controls how much the coloration is blended with the original pattern, the O3 boost, which controls how much of the O3 information to inject into the image, increasing or decreasing the presence of the cerulean color, and the shadow point, highlight reduction, and brightness sliders. Shadow point tells the tool how dark an area to begin inserting the O3 coloration into. Highlight reduction is a pretty straightforward tool. It reduces the brighter regions of the image to help avoid them being blown out during adjustment, and brightness is also the same kind of brightness tool that you're used to. It will simply modify the brightness of the image, and this can be especially important when changing coloration schemes, as color can affect the perception of brightness. Let me just quickly use these sliders to adjust this image to maximize the appearance of the blue color and also maximize the appearance of detail. I'm just going to move the blue slider back and forth until I get the bright blue that I'm looking for. Adjust the shadow point to make sure that the transition between the bright blue and the darker blue of the space further to the left and upper region of the image doesn't transition too sharply. And I'll adjust the highlight sliders and the brightness to make sure that none of the brighter areas of the region are blown out. In particular, that would be the head of the lower tadpole. And I'm also going to adjust brightness to bring up the darker regions of the dust clouds, as well as the upper right and lower right corners of the image. And using the Narrowband Normalization tool, it only takes me about a minute to get a really good approximation of the HOO color scheme with my original LRGB information. Now I think it looks good, but to be honest, I prefer LRGB because it gives a much wider range and subtle variation of color. But there are times when a more drastic or radical change of color can look good, especially if we're looking to create a beautiful image. We just have to accept that HOO and SHO are false colors and not what the image really looks like, and if you're happy with that, then that works. It can improve the aesthetic value of an image. Now let's see what happens when we apply the tool in SHO mode to the image. I can tell you in advance, it is easier to get a good HOO image of any color image than it is to get a good SHO image. And that's because HA information, which is the majority of information in most images, is playing the role of green in an SHO image, and S2 information is playing the role of red in an SHO image. But the reality is that S2 and HA both fall on the red side of the color spectrum. When an image is shot in color, whether that's with an OSC, RGB, or LRGB, the S2 and HA information are both gathered on the red filter. And so they cannot be separated for the creation of a true SHO image. So what we do with color information, whether that's derived from LRGB, RGB, or OSC, is make an SHO simulation. So accepting that, let's go ahead and switch the tool to the SHO color palette. To do so, all we have to do is go to the palette section of the tool, and click the drop-down menu, and select SHO. You'll notice immediately that the image actually looks quite similar to the original LRGB image. We have red, white, and blue areas. However, if we click off the effect of the Narrowband Normalization tool on the image, so that we can compare the effects. We can see that the Narrowband Normalization tool in the SHO mode has purified the color, making it more intense. And I have to say, even though I normally prefer the LRGB palette, I really like this. In fact, while I was just intending for this to be a demonstration image, I like it so much that I think I'll replace the Tadpole Nebula image that I have on Astrobin with it. The HOO palette is widely liked because, as I understand, it's an easier palette to work with than SHO. Getting good coloration with it is more forgiving. I say as I understand because I mostly work with LRGB images and use the RGB color palette, which more or less resembles what the human eye naturally sees. But that's because I live in dark skies, so I just generally shoot in LRGB. It captures information much faster than narrowband. Anyway, I find that this tool will pretty consistently give you good outcomes using the HOO palette. Using the SHO palette is trickier. Sometimes it will fight you, as in with the image of the Eagle Nebula here. Here's my original image of the Eagle Nebula in the RGB coloration palette because I shot it in LRGB. And to be honest, I think this palette looks really good. There's lots of good color in there and much subtle variation between the color. You just don't generally see that kind of subtle variation in shading, saturation, and color with narrowband palettes. Narrowband strength is often sharp, intense, and better delineated color. Now here's the image in HOO. But I feel the color of this complex nebula has been overly simplified, so to make it more complex and interesting, I'll try to switch it over to the SHO palette. Unfortunately, the Narrowband Normalization tool struggles to make a good implementation of the SHO palette on this Eagle Nebula image. At the default settings, the tool by and large looks like the default of the very good coloration that was attained using the LRGB palette. To give it a more intense, pure SHO look, I'll begin manipulating the color, beginning with using the SNR slider to remove the little bit of green from the blue nebulosity down here. And then I'm going to slightly intensify the blues, spread them out a bit more, and make them a little more saturated by reducing the S2 slider while intensifying the O3 slider. A couple minutes of playing with the tools gets me to where I want it. I have the cerulean blue of the central part of the nebula where I want it, but I can't seem to add any of the beautiful gold color to the reddish regions on the outskirts of the nebula. At least not without losing the lovely cerulean blue color of the central part of the nebula. And I know exactly why that is, because the S2 and the HA information both fall within the red color range of the spectrum. So the Narrowband Normalization tool doesn't know how to differentiate the information. It's not the fault of the tool, it's a limitation of the LRGB capture technique in this case. But I really want to bring in some of that gold into the nebulosity, and here's how we can do it. What I'll do is save this SHO version of the image with the beautiful cerulean blue of the central part of the nebula, and the HOO version of the image that gives us the beautiful golds of the surrounding nebula. I'll save them both as lossless TIFFs and then import them into my favorite layer-based photo editor, Affinity Photo. Now I've opened Affinity Photo and I'm just going to drag in the SHO and HOO version of the Eagle Nebula in. I dragged in the SHO first, no particular reason, it's just the first one I grabbed. And the first layer Affinity Photo always auto-labels as background. I'll change the name to SHO Eagle for clarity. Then I'm going to duplicate the background image and make it invisible. It will serve as a proof in case we have to return to our base or beginning image. Now, what I'm going to do is merge the desired color from both these images. With the HOO layer selected, I'll run through Affinity Photo's nearly 40 composite modes till I find the one that I feel works best. Of the various modes, luminosity accomplishes what I am looking for the best. Luminosity is very good at respecting brights and dark areas, while combining an image's information and also maintaining necessary contrast, which helps to differentiate structures within the image. Luminosity is retaining that beautiful cerulean blue in the middle, but it's attempting to blend the red and gold, making them look washed out. I'm going to apply a hue filter to the HOO Eagle top layer and set the filter to block the reds, which will admit the golds. The filter is now revealing the golds well, but notice the sharp bordering between the gold and the other coloration. Look in the middle of the circle and you'll see what I mean here. I can get rid of this bordering by clicking on the blur radius slider, and in this case I'll move the blur radius slider to the maximum. Then I'll drag the filter crescent a little bit more till I find the points where the golds are let through more gently and evenly so that it blends better with the SHO layer below. Right about there looks good. Now the red and gold color looks just a little weak, so I'm going to open the Vibrance tool. strengthen the vibrance a little bit to strengthen those weaker colors. Vibrance mainly affects weaker colors, and then increase the overall saturation just a little bit. Now I have some nice golds, a little red in there for variation, and a beautiful cerulean blue in the middle. But I feel the sharpness of the image overall could be improved. To do this, I'm going to merge all the layers together and create a new pixel layer. Then I'm going to tear that pixel layer apart using the frequency separation tool. I just want to add some fine structure to the image, so I'm going to set the frequency separation tool to 9.7 pixels, which will just tear away finer high frequency structure from the image. If you are unfamiliar with frequency separation and curious about this technique, click on my channel, select the video tab, and then search for frequency separation. I've made many videos in the last year on the application of the crucial yet often overlooked technique of frequency separation in the development of astrophotography images. The high frequency layer is where that fine structure is, so I've duplicated it and added the high frequency information back to the image, which will increase and improve the fine structure within the image. And I'll blend it to the original information using the soft light composite mode so the blend is nice and gentle. This is necessary because sometimes changing coloration has the deleterious effect of softening the detail within an image. By separating the high and low frequency information and adding back a little extra high frequency information, we can get back that lost sharpness. And then finally, I'm going to use the channel mixer tool on the low frequency information where the color information is and increase the red just a few percent. I'll bump it up to about 111%. This will increase the overall red throughout the image. However, I only want the red to affect the gold in the red regions. So I'm going to open a hue filter in the channel mixer layer, and do you see that crescent of dots at the middle making a partial circle? That's what you use to define what colors will be allowed through. I'm going to move that crescent so that the channel mixer's additional red only affects the gold and the red within the region to maintain that bright, beautiful cerulean blue at the center of the Eagle Nebula. I'm now adjusting the center dots. The center dots define what range of colors are affected, and the outer dots affect the overlay so that it blends in smoothly. When I'm done, there are still some harsh edges between where the gold joins the blue. In the same place as before, I'll define it again with a circle. And just like before, I can correct this sharp color division by sliding up the blur radius slider on the hue mask tool. And now we have our finished image, an SHO HOO LRGB hybrid, which I think combines the best of each world. Of course, that's a subjective assessment, and you'll have to decide for yourself if you like the coloration scheme. Also note that you would want to use a tool like the Star Exterminator before doing any of this color transformation. Otherwise, you'll also change the color of your stars, and they will look unnatural. I didn't bother with that with this image because I'm not planning to keep it. For me, it's just a demo image for the creation of this video. When I'm done with this video, I'll delete it. Here's the image in the original LRGB color palette. And here they are side by side. The original image is on the left, and the HOO SHO LRGB hybrid is on the right. Honestly, I think they both look nice and each have their own merits. And whichever one you like is perfect for you. It's entirely a subjective matter. They each have their own strengths and weaknesses. I do like the subtle shading and the wider range of color that is available within the LRGB palette, but there are times that it's a good idea to bring HOO or SHO to the table. I think the SHO color palette transformation worked especially well for the Tadpole Nebula. Though with the Eagle Nebula, honestly and personally, I would leave the LRGB color palette. It just seems to work better within its complex field of information. But in any event, the Narrowband Normalization tool, designed as far as I understand, to help normalize narrowband information and facilitate the creation of HOO, SHO, and other classic narrowband palettes, also works very, very well for converting color information to HOO and SHO and other palettes. And something I personally find more interesting, since I like to play with palettes and create new variations on color themes and detail themes, it also provides very good information that can be hybridized into entirely new palettes. As always, thank you for watching. If you have any thoughts, comments, or observations, please leave them in the comments section below. And if you decide to play with this tool and convert some of your color images to one of the narrowband palettes, let me know how it goes. Maybe post it on AstroBin or one of the free sites like Telescopius and share it with everyone. Well, autumn is still here and there is a lot of work to do before the snow flies, so I have to get outside and get to work. As for you, get out there and shoot the sky.